Great, Riccardo Zacconi, please come. Let's. Hi. Great to see you.
Thank you, Ola.
Awesome. I love all the different options we have. You get to pick your option.
Great. Hi, everyone.
Perfect. I think I read something. It was this game, Candy Crush, is so addictive that parents have forgotten to pick their children up from school. That's crazy. That's like that's pretty insane to build out a technology with that kind of power. But I want to just start with you as a founder. Something that's always kind of been interesting about you at King and with building out Candy Crush is you've always kind of played the long game. This is something that's kind of been an important theme in your career. Take me back to those kind of early days. I saw that you were living in your best friend's room. You had boxes and everything kind of around you, and you just had this idea for King.com. Take me to the mindset.
The early days. So the early days were exciting and also tough. I think what you said before, resilience, I think is really key. It took us 13 years to get here. It was not an overnight success. The early days were back in 2003. It was very, very difficult at the time to raise money. So we had this idea. This idea was new in Europe, but no one would give us money. It was a time where online was basically not very sexy. So we put in our own money. I put about 2.5, all the savings I had done before. And so all in. And so in order to be able to continue, I cut all the costs to zero. This meant I gave up my car, I gave up my flat. I went and lived with a friend for about 2 years, a very good friend. Yeah, it's not easy for the friend in particular. He was very resilient. And and then basically after almost a year, we were almost bust. So we managed to close financing really in the last second. And it was actually the day before Christmas, and we had to shut down the company because we didn't want to go or basically shut down the company with debt. And this investor, this angel investor, told us that he would invest, but he told us he would invest for many months, and he had a strange structure with trust, so he was not the one who was supposed to sign. It was a trustee who was supposed to sign, and the signature never came. And at the last second, the signature came in the fax machine, and the fax machine broke down. So the signature was exactly in the wrong part of the page. So that's where you learn early on you should never save on hardware.
And so what was the turning point for you guys? Because early on you were having to kind of prove it, and then there was a turning point.
Yeah, I think often success and failure are very close together. So as I said, it took us 13 years to get here. It was not one turning point, there were a few turning points. The first turning point was to close the financing in December 2003. Then we launched the product in August of 2003. But when you launch and there are no users, there is really zero traction. So the first turning point was to close our first distribution partnership back in 2004. Then from there, we signed a deal with Yahoo, first in Europe. Then we signed a deal with Yahoo to take over the product in the US. That was another turning point. Suddenly, we were in the US, the biggest market. And then we had a really, really tough time in 2009. So the company was already growing. We had about 100 people. We had closed in 2006 34 million euros of financing from 2 large investors. And in 2009, suddenly, this growth story was finished. Not only was finished, but actually it's declined sharply. We lost about 45% of our new incoming traffic because the users went from Yahoo, our largest partner, immediately, very, very fast, to Facebook. And it's as if someone had taken away the carpet under your feet.
So what do you do? I mean, you're in that position, and this is kind of what divides the people that succeed and the people that don't, right? If you have a billion-dollar company that, you know, there's always going to be these problems. It's how you handle those problems. So how were you able to make the switch to Facebook? And not only just make the switch to Facebook and mobile, but also create arguably, you know, one of the most popular games in history on Facebook and mobile. Take me to like the boardroom where you guys are like kind of freaking out about the traffic. What were those pivotal moments in that time period that saved the company, and not only saved it, but pushed it forward?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, it was not a weekend where we saved the company. It took us basically almost 2 years to basically do this transition. And it's it's tough. It was probably the toughest time of my life, because you get pressure from all sides. On one side, of course, you have the board, you have the investors, and then but more importantly, you have the team. So I think it's during tough times that actually you create the culture of a company. That's where you really shape the company, and that's where you set the example. You're doing, easy times is easy. So what were the key ingredients? I think the first key ingredient was to have a very transparent way of basically talking about the issues. So transparency, no bullshit. Treat your team as adults, not as kids. Not sweetening up things. I think it was the first really important ingredient. I showed the presentation to the team at one of our company gatherings in October of 2010, where I showed a picture of Mordillo. You know if you know Mordillo? Mm-hmm. Mordillo is a character. Yeah. And so you see this character, Mordillo, on the beach, sitting on a beach, sipping a cocktail under the sun, under the umbrella, lying back on a chair. And then you zoomed out and you saw this, actually it's in an hour clock. So the sand is flowing down. And so I told the team, it's only a question of time. We need to crack it. Now we still have revenues and we're profitable, but the profitability is going down and it's a matter of time. If we don't crack it, we'll have a problem. And so we set up 6 different projects, and we had half the company working on the existing live business, basically bringing in the money. Really, really hard workers. It was an amazing team. And then we put the other 50% of the company, divided it in 6 different smaller teams, working on 6 totally different ideas. And so the next thing is you need to give people trust and not to micromanage. So we got really, really good people. We gave them trust. We think this idea is great. Transparency about the development of these ideas. And then 2 of these ideas failed. Another 3 ideas became kind of stuck in the middle, which is the most difficult. And 1 idea succeeded finally in March of 2011. Actually, in April 2011. And just to give you an idea of how tough the times were, in March 2011, 2 of our investors actually decided to sell their shares just 1 month before we launched on Facebook. And
I bet they had some regrets after
yeah, I think so. It was about 1 billion.
Did you get any calls? Anyone saying?
They were worth about $1 billion at the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And give us the stats now. I mean, so not only did you have a success, you had an enormous success. Give us the stats of Candy Crush now. Can you give us any numbers to put it into context?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have around, I'm not sure that's the latest stats we disclosed. We're now part of a larger public company. I think basically we have more than 400 million monthly active users. Oh. We have players all over the globe. I think that one of my moments was when I was in Hong Kong, just after we launched in Candy Crush. This was in November 2012. So I was there in January, and there's already players playing everywhere on the street. So they were, you can exchange lives in the game, but they were exchanging lives physically. So busy poking people on the street, saying, hey, can you please give me some lives? What's your name?
How many hours a week do you spend playing Candy Crush these days? I'm assuming you have to do it for the product. Is your family, is your wife just like, put down the phone?
Well, in reality, now we have many, many games. So we have now, we went from 100 people before we launched on Facebook in 2011. Now we have about 2,200 people. So you can imagine about 50% of the people work on totally new things. So I now spend most of my time testing new games, which are in the pipe, rather than the existing ones. And I wish I had more time to play. So in general, I play, maybe a couple of hours, I would say, every few days.
What did you have to do when you had that win? And obviously now you guys are, you guys were kind of moving slowly. Now you're a rocket. Then you became a rocket ship. How did you manage that growth? What changes did you make within the company to be able to survive that period? So
you have to imagine that just to give you an idea, also there, we launched on Facebook in April 2011. We launched our first game on basically Candy Crush on mobile in November of 2012. So we had a board meeting in October, basically just a month before. In this board meeting, we approved the budget for 2013, for the year after. And basically, we launched Candy Crush. By the end of December, we had already achieved the entire budget for the next year. So boom, this was like this. So the key question was, okay, now how do we scale the company? At the time when we launched, we had 2 locations. We had Stockholm and London. The tech development was in Stockholm. I was in London, focused mainly on marketing, user acquisition, legal, finance, etc. And so we had to scale the company. To scale the company fast, Stockholm is an incredible market. We have some of the brightest minds here in tech, not only in Europe, but in the world. But it's still a small market. So in order to scale with quality, we had to open up new locations in order to hire the best people. So we now have 12 locations in the world. And we introduced the process for hiring because it's all about people at the end. Small teams can change the world. So we introduced a process where every person is interviewed through 6 people.
Wow.
If one person disagrees, basically the person is out.
Wow.
And
Are there any like specific? I know Google has all sorts of complicated questions they ask. Is there any kind of question that you guys always ask people coming in the company that helps define whether they'd be a good fit?
Well, I would say that, let me answer your question slightly differently. The interesting thing is that we look at 2 things. We look at your capabilities from a tech point of view, your experience, can you code? We have tests, of course, for coding, etc. But the other 50% is team fit. So you get interviews not only from people who are exactly doing what you do to be able to judge how good you are at it, but also from people from totally different departments who just judge basically, hey, how does the person behave? Would I want to go with the person to a bar at the end to get to a pub and get a beer or whatever? So.
What have you learned about yourself as a leader, seeing this whole kind of process through?
Well, I think at the end, leadership, from my point of view, is a few things. First of all, it's about finding the best people and being able to attract them, bring them to be part of the team. And I think that to fit well, not just from a competence point of view, but also from a personal team fit, I think is really, really important. It's my luxury. I want to spend time with people I like. The second thing I think is if you bring on board the best, and you bring them on board because there's a vision, there is something which is worth working for together, and having the best on board, you need to let them do. So it's empowering, it's allowing them, and not always to micromanage them. The third thing is working together. I think we are in our hearts a Swedish company. That's where the tech grew up. So it's very consensus-driven. It's very team-based. We work together. But at the same time, disagreement is key. So if I don't like majority decisions. If there are 10 people in the room, 9 people agree on doing something, one person disagrees, I always want to know why does the person disagree. Maybe the person sees something else that the other 9 haven't seen. So the disagreement culture is absolutely key. And then we have, I think we try to fail fast. So have a culture of failure is really important, but not failure per se, but a failure where you can learn from. So we try after every failure, we try to understand, okay, what have we failed? But failure is okay.
What role, you talk about how there's this fine line between success and failure, and even as a journalist covering entrepreneurs, you don't really see the ability for great success without also having to deal with the ability for great failure. Can you give us kind of a personal anecdote, or what role has failure played in your life?
It's constant. I fail all the time. I think the most important thing as a leader, I believe that culture is lived from the top. You do not make culture from the bottom. And the reason is very simple, and that's what I tell to every person. I do every time we have new people joining, the leadership of the company always basically meets all the new joiners and tells them what is important for them. So what for me is very important, what I tell everyone who joins every time is, guys, we're growing, and you have to imagine every time that new people join, they will look at you to understand how can I behave, what is right, what is wrong. And that's what I believe, why I believe that culture is lived from the top. And so I think that this is one of the first things which I think is important when...
Looking forward at the company, you have this big hit, and you're also constantly trying out new games and whatnot. How do you deal with that pressure of, I gotta get the next big hit, we gotta do the next addictive game, we want to do, look at what Pokemon Go did, right, with augmented reality, and even what Ola was saying about people getting in car accidents because they're so addicted to this game. How do you deal with that pressure of building out the next big addictive game that's going to catch on?
Well, I'm not sure it's the pressure. I think it's very important to set the right level of ambition. It starts all from ambition. As soon as you get complacent, it's very easy to launch a game which works, especially when you have an audience like we have. It's very easy. What is more difficult is to launch a game which is a great game. So I think you need to set up the level of ambition, and then from the level of ambition, you derive that you need to have innovation. So if you have ambition, innovation is the next phase. Innovation means you have also to accept failure if you want to innovate. So what I say to our guys is the teams decide whether they want to kill a project or not. And what I tell the team is, guys, you can launch a game, and you have to decide whether you want to get, in brackets, stuck with a game, which is kind of in between, or whether you think it's actually, at the end, you want to work for a great game, and therefore, you decide whether you want to chuck it and then start again and work on the next thing, which has the opportunity, the potential to become a great thing.
And to wrap it up before that robot
It's
starts
scary,
talking, you know, what gaming trends are you really excited about for the future?
Yeah. So I believe that, you know, there are many gaming trends. I'm probably less excited about VR. AR, I think, is very interesting. Pokemon Go has shown that, you know, there are very interesting aspects there. Personally, I believe that the whole area of playing with others, social gaming, can be reinvented. So that's an area which I think is...
Any advice you have to founders who want to build out the next billion-dollar unicorn?
Time is up, my friend.
The first advice is never listen to advice. Just, you know, do what you think is right and be resilient. That's important.
Great.
Shut up, human!
All right, Hugh,
Thank you,
for
Lori.
stopping. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.